You kind of fit a role when you're a patient, you know, you're given great care and you're put into a system and you have lots of books to read and no one expects you to go to work, and everyone is basically being as supportive as they can be and understanding and giving you knowledge, and you have also just the regimen. You have to be able to wake up for that certain drug and you have to be able to eat that day and then be able to get a good night's sleep. So you have a kind of a to-do list that's made for you, and then suddenly you don't have those drugs to be taking anymore and you don't have those symptoms to deal with anymore, but you're still not feeling the way you were before you had cancer. And that's the big challenge. Like, how do you build your new life? My name is Sara and I'm 29 years old. I was diagnosed at 22 with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, B cell, stage 4. When I was brought to the oncology department at Sunnybrook, I understood right there already that it was most likely a cancer that they were looking for. So really, I just wanted to find out what kind. So I know it sounds dramatic, but it was actually not very climatic for me to find out what kind it was, because at that point, that was the one I was hoping for and not something worse. They found that there was a high success rate in treatment with chemotherapy, and I took that for 6 months and finished it with a month of radiation, 5 days a week. I was slightly prepared because I've had a lot of cancer in my family, but it was as dramatic as they made it sound. I was hoping it wouldn't be, but I remember now the 3 days after the treatment was the most brutal, and it became very routine for me just to stay in bed for the 3 days. There was a lot of nausea and a lot of restless sleep. But the symptoms for the chemo was actually much easier than the symptoms from the tumor itself. So I found it a bit of a relief. It was cathartic almost. You know, it was like a bad flu. Believe it or not, you do get used to the chemo. After a couple of months, it starts to subside many of the strongest reactions to it, so the nausea starts to get under control, and of course it's also treating your cancer, so the cancer symptoms are starting to subside, and you're just really more fatigued. The radiation is what knocks you off your feet. I think they leave it to the end in order to ensure that the treatment would be as most effective, and to kind of keep the tumor from being able to ever grow back. I found that there were no outward symptoms from getting the radiation. It was afterwards. It just takes the energy right out of your body. It really does. And that's when the nurses say it's going to take a few months to recover from the radiation. And I found it took a long time, maybe a year. I was given some visualizations by the doctors. One of them was that it was the size of a grapefruit. I think that was just so that I could really understand how it was impacting my chest. Like, imagine putting a grapefruit right there in your chest. But they also said it was dumb. It was a dumb tumor. That was because it was so fast growing, and they were able to see that it grew so fast it wasn't able to adapt. So as long as they're able to attack it fast and harshly, then the tumor would not be able to adapt to the treatment. And then I used that info and I thought about it as being like a dumb slug in my body that was being melted away like butter. You can imagine, just like slowly over time you get this drug and it's burning up your veins, and I just imagine it melting away the layers and layers of this grapefruit-sized tumor until the point where it was the size of a pinball, and then it was the size of a thumbtack, until it was the size of just a cell. And then after treatment, I dealt with, like imagining that it was gone entirely. So it's a way of being able to focus the body on the task that it needs to handle. It doesn't need to worry about the nausea. It needs to worry about eliminating that tumor. And the mind needs to be able to focus because it's such an anxious time, and it's a very stressful time in your life, and you don't need to be worrying about the other things around your house. You don't need to be worrying about your job. You need to be just focusing yourself on healing. On a practical level, cancer changed me in many dramatic ways. I haven't been able to keep a job very steadily because I just don't have the energy to be able to maintain the schedule that the average employer for my age group expects. I can't do a 9-to-5 job now. Socially, it really impacted me because I felt like during the years 22 to 24, 25, I was almost slipped back into being a teenager because I wasn't able to accomplish the lifestyle of someone of that age, of the early 20s. So psychologically, that it changes the way you're developing wherever you're at that time. It's going to kind of put you on hold a bit. You're going to find yourself not being able to relate to some of your friends. Some of them couldn't talk to me, and I understand why. I understand that they just didn't know what to say or what to do. But, things start to fall away that don't need to be in your life, and you look back and wonder what it would have been like if they had still been a part of your life, or if those certain things that you were doing at that time would still be a part of your life. It's like a big turning point, one that you didn't have many choices in. And so that's something that you do have to deal with, and then of course that touches on how you react. There's definitely that inner strength thing that happens when you are facing an illness. It resides somewhere, behind the heart, in between the spine and the spleen, like it's just this thing that you don't even know is there in your everyday life. And then when it comes down to it, it comes down to you. You look in the mirror and you realize that really you're the one that's sick and you're the one that's going to have to pull it together. And it does, because it's there. It's something that we all have, and that little inner self, that little voice, is the one that's not going to let anything happen lying down, and that's what gets louder and louder and louder as you fight it and fight it and fight it, and so it was really reinforcing for me to see that happen. I of course didn't expect that, I've read about it, and you just don't think that that's going to be you, you think, oh, I'm just strong, I'm a strong person, or I'm really intelligent, or all of these things that you assume about yourself. You never really realize who you are until something like this happens. It's hard to look back and tell yourself, oh, I wish I had done this, or I wish I'd done that. Instead, I like to say no regrets, right? Because you do what you have to do. And sometimes it's not the right choices, and sometimes you start learning about the consequences of them, and you do think, oh, well, if I had done this, maybe it wouldn't have come out that way. But I think it's very dangerous for me at this point to look back and have a wish list of what I could have done otherwise, because something that you still work with, even at this point, is that it's been emotionally draining, and so it's easier for me to get depressed. And I look back and realize that, what, I handled it like a human being, and that I need to be proud of the fact that I handled it at all. Ultimately, I think everything went as well as I could say, I could hope, really. Like, I'm considered in the cure zone now because it's been 5 years since treatment, so I can't really complain.